So the first feeling I had that was clear was annoyance. Not a minor sort of annoyance like when someone bumps into you, but the sort of annoyance when you spend your last $5 on like a fancy cup of coffee you really need, you just want to treat yourself, and then you get out the door and drop it. So like annoyed, but with a little bit of like, fuck! See, a week previous, I'd been randomly and completely surprisingly diagnosed with cancer. And the feeling you just had right now is exactly the same feeling I had, which is, what? So in the same sense, and I'm carrying you along with me in that, like, still dealing with this new information, I spent about a week doing my job. And then 10 days later, I came in to go for surgery, and I remember the night before feeling really, really annoyed. And I wasn't annoyed out of some like practical reason. I was annoyed because I had shit to do. I'm a 30-something person. I have things I need to do, and I wanted to do them. And this was, I didn't have time for it. This is a waste of my time. I have a new job. I have all these things I want to do, and this is just in the way. And I remember the night before, one of the most important things you have to do is, it's colon cancer. And I had my large intestine removed. And so one of the things they have to do is like flush you out. So it's like this weird torture thing they do where you're not allowed to eat, and then you have to drink 4 liters of this really nasty liquid. I see a bunch of nodding heads. At least half a dozen people in this room totally understand what I'm saying right now. I have to drink this really nasty liquid, and it's like fake cherry flavor. It doesn't taste like cherries. And it sort of washes you all out, and you're not allowed to eat anything. And I remember this annoyance, and the latest annoyance was I have things I have to do. I have emails I have to write. I have a job. I'm in charge of a kitchen. This is very important. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for all of this nonsense. I'm also extremely annoyed that I'm not allowed to eat. I'm extremely annoyed I have to drink all this gross liquid. I'm extremely annoyed that I have to be up at 4 a.m. because I actually work a late shift, and couldn't possibly be a worse time for me. And it was just really annoying. I didn't have any other feelings. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't concerned. I wasn't feeling of hope or joy. Nothing. No feelings. Just extreme annoyance. So I woke up in the morning, and my parents picked me up, and they drove me to the hospital for 5:30 or some ungodly hour. And I got there, and annoyance turned to boredom. I remember sitting in this like weird waiting room with my parents, killing about an hour. Make sure you show up on time. It's like getting on an airplane, right? You show up on time, and then you sit there forever. And so I was playing with my phone. I had every conversation I could possibly have with my parents, and I just ran out of time. I was just bored. And then so this weird waiting room moved to this like weird like pre-op, take our clothes off, put on these weird secondhand pajamas room. And we do that. And everyone's smiling, and everyone's being really nice, and I'm just really bored. Then they move you to this third spot, which is like the pre-surgery area. And you've got all the blue stuff on, and you're in it. It's a busy place. There's a lot of surgery going on. And I was sitting there, and there's people whisking around and whatnot, and people start coming up to me one by one, and they're all, it depends on who the doctor is, I feel like, how they play it. So like some of them are like, hey, how you doing this morning? And some of them are like really somber and serious and whatnot. And my natural reaction is to like, whenever I feel uncomfortable, is to make other people laugh. And so I go through this weird hour and a half sitting in this like really public room with, basically naked with like blue cloth over me. People coming up every once in a while asking me a couple questions and either taking something or giving me something, God knows what. And sitting there and having all these weird conversations, and still I'm annoyed and I'm bored. And then they tell me I'm about to go in. And this is like, and what you need to understand for context is that my natural reaction to like any sort of stressful situation is to go sort of like emotionally cold. And some people might not understand that. I feel like a lot of people will. But like, when like a grandparent dies or something happens, my emotions just turn off. And so I've been sitting there in this thing, but it'll turn off like internally, but I'm still reflecting other people's things. So I see these doctors coming in looking very serious, or nurse coming in very serious. We have to give you this shot now. It's going to be this. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And I'm trying to like make jokes about like their lapel pins and like, oh, did you wear that every day? And like really bad jokes. They're not funny jokes. Don't get the wrong idea. But just like making any attempt to like bring some levity to the situation because everyone else seems so serious. It's kind of like being at your own funeral, greeting people, and be like, oh, so sorry you died. Yeah, but And I would tell you about it. Like it doesn't make sense, and it didn't make sense. So that confusion that you're feeling right now is accurate. And then finally, the first thing other than boredom and annoyance hits me. And it's right as they're about like, okay, you've had all your shots, you've seen all your doctors, we're going to be taking you in a few minutes. And I remember feeling for the first time, actually feeling afraid. And it was weird because it was sort of like all the fear that I probably was supposed to be feeling over the last 10 days sort of crammed into about 15 minutes. And so I had all these range of emotions, all the emotions you would expect to have. Am I going to wake up? It's intestinal things, so they're cutting out a big part of your guts. So am I going to wake up with a bag? And they were like, well, if we're lucky, we get to do laparoscopic, which means they make little holes and they use tubes. It's actually super scientific cool, which is part of what I liked about it. So they use all these like cameras and stuff. But if that doesn't go well, we might have to slice you open and all these things. And so all the predictable thoughts start running through my head. Am I going to wake up? Am I going to have a bag for the rest of my life with like poo under my shirt? That's not sexy. These are literally, those are the thoughts that are going through my head. So we go all that, and I'm suddenly now sort of realizing where the situation is. And they wheel me into the room, and it's washed over. It took about 15 minutes, and I had all the emotion, like a week and a half's worth of emotions compressed into about 15 minutes. And then once again, my sort of dealing with stress brain takes over again, and I'm being wheeled into this room. And I remember feeling like this looks like the actual the surgery room, and I've seen a lot of science TV shows about doctors, right? And it's always these really cool rooms, and there's lots of lights and cameras and operating stuff. And there's like a cool panel room up top where all the smart doctors make sarcastic comments and all that stuff. And I was a fan of House, and it wasn't like that. It looked like a bike shop. I was it wasn't afraid. It was concerned. Like, did they misunderstand the surgery I'm supposed to have? I don't have a flat tire. You've got to take out my large intestine. But it was weird. It was really big, if you can imagine. Like a bike shop, they have hooks of tools. So there's things everywhere. And it just looked wrong. And so they start doing that count backwards thing. Okay, 5, 4, count backwards, you fall asleep. And I just remember going 5, 4, there's something wrong. Then I wake up. And the first feeling I had is not really that hard to explain. Fuck, that hurts! I'm not even going to bother trying to explain to you this sort of intensity. It was the sort of intensity, I can visualize it for you. Imagine that secretly aliens had come in and used a teleportation device to put a bunch of broken bottles in your guts, and then somebody punched you in the stomach about 50 times. It's basically sore from here to here with then lots of sharp pain. And I remember being really angry. When you wake up from a lot of drugs, it's this time teleportation thing, and your brain doesn't pick up where it left off. It's like a reset, right? And so you don't know where you are, you don't know what you're doing, and you just things are rebooting, and pain is very primal. And so I remember waking up and sort of shaking, and this really pleasant nurse came in and was cartoonishly cheery. Hi, how are we this morning? Are you feeling? And I was in my head, and I nearly said it. It was fuck you, seriously. I don't feel okay. I'm in a lot of pain. Oh, wait, I'm in a hospital, right? And the thoughts start coming back. And she goes away. She informs me before she leaves that there's a morphine machine, and it's got a little plug I'm hooked up. She says, now, don't worry about it. Anytime you feel like you need any pain relief, you just hit the button. And don't worry about hitting it too much because it's on a timer, so you can't actually hit it any more often than every 5 minutes. Cool. So just press it every time you want it. So just, of course, lean on the button. And one of the most distinct feelings that I have is that I very distinctly have this memory, is that I remember paging, because you've got the morphine button on one hand, you've got the emergency red, I need help button in the other. And I remember being so concerned that the machine was broken, because it had felt like forever since I'd actually had a last thing, and I was in incredible pain. It's God, it must have been 15. Okay, it's definitely been 15 minutes. There's no way this thing is working. And so I paged the nurse. And then it goes, shit, that was 5 minutes. This is going to be a really long weekend. And so the next few days was very similar. People coming and going, being cartoonishly pleasant, and me wanting them to go away and light on fire or something. Really horrible. Like, I know it sounds terrible, but when you're in that sort of pain and people are like, hi, how are you? You really just want to hurt them. I'm just being honest. And so I fell asleep again, thankfully. I woke up again. This time I'm in a different room. And there was someone, so I'm in a curtain, so imagine you're lying in one of those beds, and I'm sure about half the audience probably had this, the curtain, right? And I remember waking up feeling really dazed, and there was a loud, very, very loud voice coming from almost immediately next to me. It wasn't English. I have no idea what language it was, but it was very, very loud, and it made me concerned. When you wake up and someone is yelling in a language you don't understand, it doesn't matter what the language is. Your immediate reaction is something is wrong here, and you're very concerned. And so it turned out, I found later after being, again, quite disassociated, that the gentleman next to me, his family, I asked the nurse about it, and apparently his family is Hungarian, his family was in Hungary, and he didn't have any family there, and he's almost nearly deaf. And so his only way to communicate with the outside world was to talk on a cell phone to Hungary, and he's nearly deaf. And so all of his conversation all day is, screaming into the phone. This is not necessarily super therapeutic for healing. So I eventually asked them to move me to another room. I get to my last room, and there's a really weird feeling. This wouldn't be relevant except for this one part, which is that I'm never really super been comfortable around super intense masculinity. And I hope that doesn't offend anybody in the audience. But it's not about men or women. It's just like super intense, like bro-ishness. It's not about not liking it. It's not about like not getting along with those people. Like it actually makes me super uncomfortable. It puts me off in a way that I feel unsafe. As a queer person, I've been picked on by those people, and I have this knee-jerk reaction. So I walked into my new room, thinking, oh, finally, I don't have to deal with the screaming guy in a language I don't understand that, having watched too many James Bond movies just makes me paranoid. And I'm now in a room with this really bro-ish-looking, workout, muscly dude and his, pretty girlfriend. And so it's okay. My friends start to come and go a little bit, getting a little bit nicer to people who say, hi, how are you feeling? I don't automatically want to choke them. I'm still in a lot of pain, but I'm getting used to it, right? It's starting to be the new normal. But one of the things you have to understand, and I think this will be very useful for people that maybe have someone who goes through this or something like that, is there's this feeling that people have that there's something wrong with you, so you want to help them. And I totally understand it. I understand where it's coming from. Most of it is opposite of what people need. So what I was feeling was not okay. But someone offering me help made me angry. And it was because we both knew there was nothing they could do to help me. And so it was just very frustrating to have them offer. It's like when someone says, oh, do you want me to do something for you? And they don't mean it. It's similar, but just in the sense that it's not because they don't mean it, it's because they can't do it. The thing you need, they can't do. And so you have this weird social interaction. It's very uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for everybody. And as the sick person, you have this weird feeling of needing to validate other people's reaction. And so, you have cancer, but it's not, you don't feel it. People associate, the effects of chemotherapy, a lot of it, with the hair loss and a lot of the diet issues and a lot of the implications of that. That's really, really terrible. But the cancer itself isn't necessarily painful. So I had this feeling of going around, and I was like, well, I hurt from surgery, but I didn't hurt before. I don't actually understand that there's anything wrong with me. It didn't feel real. And so when people pour over themselves offering you help, you have this weird annoyance combined with this weird sense of guilt. It's like when if you've ever gone into a bar and someone at your table has claimed it was their birthday to get something for free when it wasn't really. It's this weird, dirty feeling. I can't describe it, but that's what it felt like. So I'm coming into this room, and there was this dude who was here. And they were chatting, and they'd really made themselves at home. So this is really important, he's got both his legs sort of spayed out, right? Like this. And they're both in full knee down, or sort of mid-hip down casts, right? So something serious has happened to this gentleman's legs. But he's looking pretty at home. He's sprawled out. They got McDonald's everywhere. His girlfriend's kind of lying up beside him. They're chatting. They seem like they're having a good time. So I get wheeled in beside them. Still feeling really uncomfortable, still feeling really sore. And this sort of weird thing happened because we're so close that you can't not hear each other. And so I eventually just sort of dragged myself into their conversation because they're talking inches away from me through this, paper-thin screen. And so I introduce myself and whatever happens, and there's only so many news articles you can read on your phone, and so eventually I end up talking to these guys, and I found out what happened to him. And what happened to him is really terrible. You'll understand why I'm smiling and laughing at the same time when I'm saying that. So what happened to this guy was he's a pool worker. He works on pools, and he was working late at night. He didn't do anything wrong. Nobody did anything wrong. It was just an accident. He fell backwards about 8 meters into an empty pool and shattered. I got to put my leg up so you can see this. Shattered about every bone from here to here on both legs. He fell backwards 8 meters into an empty pool and landed heel down because he was trying to land, right? It's his natural human thing. So he basically shattered both of his lower legs. Time is passing. I'm still feeling like shit. It's basically, it's just flatline from here. Just assume that I feel awful, like my stomach is full of broken glass this entire time. But I'm listening to this, doctors come in and out of the room now because I'm just recovering. He's going into surgery. About how, we tried to seal it up, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do that. So we're going to do this. They leave, they go. Come back. Well, we messed that up. We're going to have to do it again. They had to open him up again and redo one of the bolts. Really terrible. So I'm lying there in pain, but this guy's story is kind of making me feel a little bit better. Because I was like, shit, at least I didn't fall backwards into a pool 8 meters and shatter both of my legs. That guy might never walk again. And we both had visitors coming and going. But really at the end of it, there's a lot of things. People, you end up being, when you're this person that has all this attention on you for this reason that you feel like you don't deserve. It's not like I won an award. I got sick. It was random. And then all of these people give you this attention. It makes you feel really, really weird. And different people handle it different ways. I don't really like the attention. I don't like attention I don't feel like I've deserved, and so I felt really guilty. But what was really interesting was that, and I had a couple of my close friends coming and going and really caring for me in a way that at the time I couldn't appreciate. But after all of this, I ended up talking to this guy, and we were doing this funny thing. It would be up at 3 a.m. and the nurses would come and check on your morphine or give you a pain pill, or I'd hear his conversations, he'd hear mine. There's no real privacy in a room. And eventually we sort of bonded over being two people who were just really used to being really capable. It's not just that I'm not used to not being sick. I'm used to being the person that people ask to do things for them. And being so utterly and completely helpless was a really new experience for me. And I was next to this guy who clearly looked like he was the person that, when you need to move a couch, you call him, and he was in the same spot. He might never walk again. And so the weird thing of the whole experience, there's so much more. There's like a 14-hour version of this story. But for the extent of this portion of the story, what was really, really amazing at the end of it was I ended up getting something from this random guy that I couldn't possibly have gotten from anyone I knew. Because we're both sitting there, and he was thinking, I might have shattered my legs, but at least I don't have fucking cancer. And I was sitting there, I might have cancer, but I'm probably going to be fine. I woke up. There was no bag. They did the laparoscopic. I got little scars. They're going to heal. I can go to the bathroom without bleeding. I'm probably going to be fine. There's, recurrence and all that stuff, but I'm probably going to be fine. At least I didn't shatter both of my fucking legs. And the end of it, that was sort of the weird thing, is we ended up making each other feel better in a way that people that knew us and loved us couldn't possibly do. That's my story.
Saryn, Caister.